chapter covers the Emergency Response and Planning ERP. This is the learning outcome of Chapter 6. Students need to understand the importance of Emergency Response and Planning ERP. Students need to familiarize with the basics terminologies used in ERP. Students are required to understand the historical of ERP and to understand causes of emergency event. This is about the emergency management by James Lee Witt. My philosophy about emergency management has always been that we need to take a common sense, practical approach to reducing the risks we face and protecting our citizens and our communities. We need to identify our risks, educate and communicate to our people about those risks, prepare as best we can for the risks, and then, together, form partnership to take action to reduce those risks. This approach applies whether we are dealing with a flood, a tornado, a hazardous material spills, a wildfire, a potential suicide bomb explosion, or a pandemic flu outbreak. The world map shows the mapping of natural hazard worldwide. The map is estimating the levels of exposure of the different countries to natural hazards. The red color indicates the very high level of exposure, and the blue one is the lowest level of exposure. The Ring of Fire is a major area in the basin of the Pacific Ocean, where a large number of earthquakes and volcanic eruptions occur. As the population has increased, more natural events are interacting with people-created disasters. The world is more connected than ever before, and as the technology and connectivity increases more and more natural disasters are reported, as technology and science continue to develop, the poverty and population growth and resource demand are increased as well. The number of human-influenced events such as landslides, nuclear explosions and dam failures has also increased. Global warming is also a contributing factor to the hydrometeorological hazards. As the world warms, evaporation causes more and more droughts, changing weather patterns are bringing larger magnitude events and unprepared vulnerable populations into harm's ways. Here is the lists of history of emergency in Malaysia. The events were started in 1989 during Kedah Madrasah fire, and ended in 2016 for the Kuantan bauxite. These are the lists of definitions such as emergency, crisis, and crisis management. Emergency is any incident, whether natural or man-made, that requires responsive action to protect life or property. These are the lists of definitions of disasters in emergency application, social science application, and healthcare organization application. Disaster is a hazard impact causing adverse physical, social, psychological, economical or political effects that challenges the ability to rapidly and effectively respond. These are the lists of definitions such as action plans. Action plans are the written or verbal plans that reflect the overall incident goal and incident strategy, objectives, specific actions and assignments, and supporting information for the certain period. Area Command is an organization to oversee the management of incidents that being handled by Incident Command System, or to oversee the management of a very large or evolving incident that has multiple incident management team engage. Catastrophe is an event in which a society incurs, or is threatened to incur, such losses to person and or property that the entire society is affected, and extraordinary resources and skills are required, some of which must come from other nations. Contingency planning is an internal effort within an organization to assure that the competence, capacity, and capability exist to continue and or to restore essential business and service functions. and processes across a wide range of potential emergencies, including natural, technological, and intentional hazards. What is natural hazard? Natural hazards are those hazards that exist in the natural environment and pose a threat to human populations and communities. The data is based on Asia's disaster toll that showed the people killed in natural disasters from 1900 to 2013. The highest data was by drought, then followed by flood, earthquake, cyclone, and the lowest data by tsunami. The data showed various countries in Asia that experienced three types of natural disasters: of earthquake, floods, and cyclone. China had many people killed by earthquake. On the other hand, Thailand had many people killed due to floods. This data shows the numbers of deaths in Asia due to the tsunami after the earthquake. Indonesia was the highest when the tsunami struck Aceh in the year 2004. The highest cost due to natural disasters in Asia was due by floods, followed by earthquake, tsunami, cyclone, and the lowest cost by drought. The table shows the desertification vulnerability in Asia, where China is the most vulnerable to desertification. Next country is India, and then Indonesia, as the top three countries for the desertification in Asia. This is the Malaysia natural disaster profiles, due to droughts, floods, and landslides. The most crucial natural disaster was due by floods, which shows the highest mortality. Why statistics is important? Risk reduction. Understanding that location and place is a vital component of effective decision-making. Geoinformatics, also known as Geographic Information Science (GIS), is becoming a rapidly expanding field. It involves the use of techniques for proper storage, classification, representation and analysis of data so that it can be used efficiently. The fire brigades were in action for extinguishing the fire. Fires mostly can be triggered by lightning or overload by electricity current. Hazardous material also a source of fire with different flash point. 4 elements require fire to occur. That is source of ignition, fuel, oxygen and chemical reaction. There are 2 types of systems, which is active system and passive system. The examples of active system are fire extinguisher, hose reel, water sprinkler system, and inerting carbon dioxide system. The passive systems are emergency exit, mapping and access to preventing fire. The accident happened at Bright Sparkler on the 7th of May 1991. The explosion occurred at the firecracker company in Sungai Buloh. That the explosion was in great scale. The incident was also known the Hiroshima Sungai Buloh. The left top animation shows the containment of waste in different classes such as contaminate biological materials, hazardous material, radioactive waste and mutant organism. Since the location of the waste is not proper, the mutant organisms are crawling out from the containment. On the right-sided animation shows a tanker of hazardous material with a warning of danger. But the man is opening the manhole and checking the material inside without proper personal protective equipment. The full data of safety information is already noticeable, but the man ignores it. Hazardous material are chemical substances which is released or misused, can pose a threat to environment or health. Mostly come in the form of explosive, flammable and combustible substances, poisons. The straight line graph shows the poison lines of chlorine gas. The lowest concentration of chlorine is in detectable order at 2 parts per million. There is threshold limit value (TLV) of chlorine, is a level to which a worker can be exposed a day. A short-term exposure limit (STL) at 5 ppm is the acceptable average exposure over a short period of time, usually 15 minutes. Immediate dangerous to life or health (IDLH) of chlorine is at 25 ppm. The straight line graph shows the poison lines of ammonia gas. The lowest concentration of ammonia is in detectable order at 7 parts per million. There is threshold limit value (TLV) of ammonia, is a level to which a worker can be exposed a day. A short-term exposure limit (STL) at 35 ppm is the acceptable average exposure over a short period of time, usually 15 minutes. Immediate dangerous to life or health (IDLH) of ammonia is at 500 ppm. Nuclear accidents. Potential danger from accident at nuclear plant is the exposure for radiation. This exposure characterized by a plume and release radiation contamination. Radioactive release effect is determined by the amount released from a plant, wind direction, speed and weather condition. This figure shows the electromagnetic spectrum that consists of non-ionizing radiation and ionizing radiation. The long-term exposure over the non-ionizing radiation, such as microwave, radio waves, and visible light, causes the cumulative non-thermal effects. On the other hand, the short-term exposure of ionizing radiation, such as X-rays and gamma rays, will have the instant thermal effects. This nuclear accident happened in Brazil, September 1987. The accident was considered as the worst radiation accident than the Russia Chernobyl. The doctors abandoned the radiotherapy machine with cesium chloride in a lead canister. People found the canister and opened it. Children and adults were exposed to the radiation many times than the lethal dose of radiation. You can't manage what you don't measure. Denial is when we have an argument like, why we waste our time? For example, when someone has done business like this for 20 years, and he never had a problem before. Reactive is when something happens. Then we try to fix it. For example, accidents, audit results, etc. Static is the systems in place. To manage what we have to focus on process, not outcomes. Proactive is when the condition is always on alert for any risks that will be emerged. Dynamic is an integrated system into everything we do. Shared beliefs amongst employees. The way we do the business. And it is difficult to define or measure it. S&P team moves more from focus on finding problems to focus on confirming the absence of problems.